It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series. Today we're taking a look at the Beholder number 26. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer. This is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, I take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look. And today, from 1981, we're taking a look at the Beholder number 26. Hope you enjoy the video. So over the last several weeks, I've taken a look at a couple of different fanzines. First, we went through the entire series of the Beholder from 1 to 25. Then we took a look at the Aerial Servant, and the reason for that is because those two sort of combine into what I have here. It's titled The Beholder. A lot of folks in the fanzine collecting community sort of call it the New Beholder. This is issue number 26, so they continued the numbering. But as it says right there on the masthead, the Beholder incorporating the Aerial Servant. And as we'll see here in just a moment, a number of the people who are actually involved in producing the Aerial Servant helped Nicholas Scales put together this product, which is called the Beholder, the New Beholder. It's the same size as the Aerial Servant was. It's sort of magazine sized. In the UK, that seemed to be a little bit longer than what it is here in the USA. It's a slightly heavy stock cover with regular paper and then sort of a sticky binding, like a piece of really heavy duty tape or something that was put around as a binding for this. I'm sure there's if you're in that business, there's probably a fancier word for that, but that's essentially how these are put together. This one is 24 pages numbered, counting the covers, and then there's also a page of monsters that's perforated and made so you could tear it out. So it's actually only one piece of paper with just a little tab of that folded across the middle here. So it actually has, in my view, 26 pages in total. Let's take a look at the cover art here. This is not signed or initialed in any way that I could see. And while they give credit to a number of people who helped with the fanzine, they don't give any particular artist credit that I noticed inside of here. So what is inside of this first issue of the new, or the reborn version of the New Beholder? We have an editorial with always interesting when a new person takes over or starts a fanzine, because they always give you a little bit of thought about what's going on. The Realm of Order, which is a new adventure. Shop review, which is something Nicholas Scales has started to highlight one of the shops where you can find RPGs over in the UK. The Preacher's Pulpit, I think his idea there is a very short page or two where someone could write in their own idea, maybe not quite long enough for a larger article. Your Rights is basically a letters column, monster summoning new monsters. The Word Search, again from Graham Staplehurst, this makes I think the third one that he has done. The Armorers Guild, which is an article about arms and armor. Anthern, which I think I'm saying that correctly, that's a Travller article. Helmenhale, which is also a Graham Staplehurst initiative where he's trying to create a new city scenario or setting, right? So he mentions sort of his idea is something like, but better than the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. And then a reimagined section called the Electric Zygote that not only has the play-by-mail information that was always in the Aerial Servant, but also talks about other things like reviews and new releases of products. I'll get myself out of the way. We talk a little bit here about who is involved. So Nicholas Scales is the owner now, or the editor of this. Scale Design is named in here as the actual publisher. As I understand it, that's his company. Simon Kirby, Graham Askey, Stephen Cullis, Matthew Hankins, those are all folks that were deeply connected to the Aerial Servant. Also, Alex Self, who was an artist for the Beholder. He has a sort of comic strip, and that reappears here. Keir Watson, who did art in the Aerial Servant, is also given some credit. And then some new names, and Dave Davies also was a participant in the Aerial Servant. Some new names here: Michael Dale, Helen Jago, who I think did some art in one section, Michael Dale, John Crook, and Graham Staplehurst, I've already mentioned, who did a number of things for, frankly, both of those fanzines over time. The first thing we have here is the editorial. And as I say, always interesting when someone's starting out on a venture to sort of read and see what they want to talk about here, right? So, and as he says, this is what you've been waiting for, the quote, new Beholder. It's very different than the prior Beholder. But we think the changes are made for the better. He says, you may not. Please let us know. We want to hear from people, and we're going to get a reader questionnaire out there pretty soon to get some just deliberate feedback. He said we may make some mistakes. We apologize for that. There are many articles in here that the people from the Beholder will recognize, and there are also, of course, going to be some articles in here readers of the Ariel Servant will recognize. And if you've been watching our videos, you know those sort of jump right out at you. It's definitely an amalgamation of both of those fanzines with some additional twist to it. The first thing that's new is his idea of this thing called the Preacher's Pulpit, to give your views or insights or suggestions, as he says, but for someone who doesn't feel like they quite want to write a whole article. Although, I don't know, an article can be really any length, right? So I think it's just not an extensive article. He mentions Your Rights, which is going to be his place for letters. He's interested in doing that and hopes to be able to publish just about anything people send in within reason. The shop review, which is his brand new idea, which is to highlight a different shop where you can get your favorite RPGs in your community, which I think is a great sort of service to the community. It's not clear to me that he's getting any payment or sponsorship for this either, so I think he's just really trying to help out the community. Monster summoning, which comes from the Beholder, his new idea is to perforate that so you could tear out those monsters and I guess keep them in a notebook or something like that. He does hope this will be the best fantasy gaming magazine on the market based on obviously the readership that it gets. And of course he's committed to keeping it as an independent production that is giving honest opinions about the readers and the writers here. Mike Stoner has asked that he Nick share with you all the readers that they don't have any reprints ready yet, but they'll have more information on back issues available soon. In terms of his plans, he indicates that he wants to produce this every 6 weeks. And so this one here, it comes out in June, the beginning of June, 1981. And then, so the next issue would be the middle of July, then the beginning of September, then the middle of October, and so forth. And he only produces 4 issues of this, in fact, once he gets into it. Okay, so we have a Dungeons and Dragons adventure here. It's called The Realm of Order. And if you notice something, the type got a lot smaller. He actually specifically talks about that in here and says people really wanted him to have, continue to have scenarios. Remember, Guy Duke produces scenarios in just about every issue of The Beholder. Other people, Andy Ravenscroft, others, occasionally had an adventure in The Beholder, but they had one about every issue. And he was concerned that that kind of thing takes up so much room. And in order to kind of compromise, what he did was shrink the text down. It is fairly difficult to read, especially as you get older and your eyes aren't quite as sharp as they were as a youngster. But it's all there. And what I would say about this adventure is it's another one with lots of really clever ideas, but it's sort of an amalgamation where someone said, well, here's an interesting idea and here's an interesting idea, and I'm going to sort of dump them all together into this one adventure. And several things along the way I felt like could have been really fleshed out and been much more robust. There could have been a lot more to it. I'll mention that here specifically in just a second. Here is the map for this, which is a little hard to follow until I give you the explanation. So here is our background. Beyond the sinking glacier of Mardinar, in the mountains of Moan, there exists a miniature paradise in which lies the pool of fables true, the beginning of all great adventures. It is believed from this point you can enact your dreams, but a point often added is, whether or not this is free is another matter. The stories have interested the owner of a nearby land who is interested in, this gets a little convoluted here, this guy owns the land around this mountain. There is an ancient text that says if someone goes into the mountain to this pool and returns, then they gain ownership of the mountain. And so this guy, sort of a capitalist, the mountain he thinks has certain ores that would be very valuable. And so he wants to own this mountain that adjoins his lands. He does not, however, want to risk himself by going into this pool. And so that's why he's hired you, the adventurers. And what he tells you, I don't think he tells you the legal part of that. What he tells you is, hey, there's this pool. If you go into it, I'll outfit you, give you whatever equipment you need, I'll help you out, horses, henchmen, whatever you need. You go in, you come back, you get to keep anything you find, and I'll give you some gold. And he says, if it's challenging, I'll give you 500 gold pieces a piece. If it turns out you can just walk up the mountain and come back because there's no real challenge, maybe I don't give you as much gold. Maybe it's only 150 gold pieces. And of course, his motivation is he would become the owner of the mountain. And again, I don't think he's going to tell you that, but they tell us that here. So they give you some XP because there's some new XP notes because there's some new monsters here and some other DM's tips. But essentially, you go up the mountain, you come to this pool, and it's going to take you a while to find your way in, but they don't give you no real description. They just say it should take 4 days of searching before you find your way in. There are no encounters scripted here other than when after 4 days you eventually find the path that takes you to the little vale where there's a pool. They give you a little bit of character, say, look, it should be gray, it should be overcast, but then when you get into this little area around the pool, it's all green, it's lush, the sun is shining through, there's sort of a hole in the clouds that always is shining down on this pool. You see a guy there in armor, he's a warrior, his job is to protect the pool, and he will say, I'm charged with guarding the pool, but I know not what significance it has. Fate selected me for this task. You, of course, wish to pass, and I will do my best to prevent it, although I say if I am killed, I shall rise at the next dawn. But my death does give me a temporary respite from the pains of this eternal life. So he sort of gives you a pass or a forgiveness from having to kill him since he's sort of a noble warrior. But anyway, so you kill him, and then you're going to be able to walk into the water, and you will be transported to this map. Okay, so let me give you a better picture of that map, and I'll tell you a little bit about, what you get here. So you've gone up, you go into the pool, you're going to get transported into this map. You start at A. It's fairly linear. On this island, you head down here. The straight line is golden bricks that form a bridge way up above the water. You're walking along there. If you go to the north, it's going to dead end. Really nothing there. You come down to the southwest, and it's going to branch. You have to go left or right. The first thing you see is this little cluster of these short people that look a lot like children. They have some skin disease like leprosy, so they're really supposed to be sort of physically repulsive. They ask you to play games with them. If you refuse, they will attack you with their little daggers and sticks or whatever other weapons they can get a hold of. If you do sit down and play games with them, they'll love it. It'll be great. But then no matter when you decide to quit, sort of just like a kid, they're never satisfied. And so then they'll attack you. And so basically there's no way to get out of here without getting attacked and having to kill these diseased children. So I would edit that somehow, either so that you don't have to kill the kids, or, well, so that they weren't kids, I guess, bottom line, right? But I wouldn't probably keep the kill children encounter. Now, when you go left or right, you have a very narrow passageway, and into the middle is this bottomless black chasm. And so if you fall off, you're going to fall forever, you're gone. So then we get some good old-fashioned monsters here, right? So one side is like a devil, the other side is like this 10-legged lizard, good old-fashioned D&D attacks there. And you're going to have to fight your way past it because it's not wide enough for you to get past otherwise. So somebody either's going to fall in the chasm or get killed. You get to the far side, then there's going to be like a boat you see just out. There's a beach, and then off to the side you see this boat. Looks like it's run aground. Hopefully you investigate, because that is your ticket out of this realm. When you go out there, you realize it's actually not stuck. It actually is floating on the water. It has a flat bottom on it because it floats on the water. It's kind of a magically enchanted ship. There are some undead on there for you to fight, but then there's a lot of people who sort of live on the ship, that belong on the ship, that somehow has gotten stranded here. And somehow, and they don't say this, but you're going to have to figure out, maybe someone on the ship's going to tell you, that sort of on the area where you would control the steering, there's like this little sci-fi box that has some different levers on it you can use, and has a little spot for a pink gemstone, which is what you have to find to get out of here, which has been lost. And so now you at least know what your quest is. When you do, you can use this magically enchanted thing and you can get back to your world. So you have to keep going. Fairly linear, right? Pardon me. You go up to the north, and you can go off to the left to this volcano, but instead of spewing lava, it spews this super cold liquid, which has some weird properties. Like if you have a frost, like a wand of frost or any kind of cold-based weapon, if you dip it into this, it'll recharge it. If you touch it, it's going to cause extreme cold damage. I think sort of like liquid nitrogen, right? It's sort of like freeze your hand off or whatever. If you can figure out how to put some of this liquid into, say, a little glass container and throw it, it becomes a good missile weapon. You can either cause cold damage to an opponent. You can throw it at a fire. It'll instantly put out a fire in a certain area. You go over to the right-hand side. You've got these big, I think it sort of reminds me a little bit of a water park. So these tall pillars, you climb up to the top, and then basically you find out they're tubes, and you can fall down in them. They have some enchantment, so it's sort of like a feather fall that you won't take any damage. You'll just come down very gently. When you get all the way down, they'll turn. You'll walk out through these clear tubes, and you'll realize you're underwater, sort of like a trip to an aquarium, and you can see the sea life. No idea why. You keep going forward, and then you go back up. There's a little encounter in there. And then you'll just head north, and now we have a second called the Cloud Road, headed north to the next little encounter spot. And along the way, you see this sort of blow up, right? There's 3 encounters, which as a player, you'd be better off skipping. A little bit of a spoiler, because one room has like lava with a salamander in it. Another one has a creature that's in the liquid, but it's sort of like a roper. Kind of reminds me of the scene from Peter Jackson's Fellowship of the Rings at the Elven Door, where the sort of squid-like creature comes up out of there. And then the other one is a new monster that's in the monster summoning section of this fanzine. It's basically a mist elemental of some sort. More complicated than that, but we'll talk about that in the new article, in the new monsters article. So you're going to head north. You come up to this island. There's 3 pathways. You go to the left to the forest. You can get attacked by a giant Tyrannosaurus Rex. You go straight ahead, and there's this castle. This is one of those things where I think a good DM would actually make this more detail, more interesting. It says you find an abandoned castle, and the notes here say there's nothing there except for the 2 towers. So that's a lot of potential interesting stuff to do. I don't know if you're supposed to just railroad your characters up to the towers, or you're supposed to just make it up, but they give you no information about this castle. Anyway, you go up the tower. Whichever one you go up to first will be the one. You open the door. There's a devil in there sort of torturing this guy. Presumptively, you'll kill the devil, rescue the guy. He says, "Oh, I'm a prince. My princess is in the other tower. Can you go save her?" Which, of course, you'll go do. When you do, the princess will kiss the guy. He turns into a giant toad. He eats her. There you go. Memorable, I suppose, and unexpected. And if you go to the right, again, this could be a lot more interesting. There's this cave you go into. Has some blue and yellow sort of glowing crystals, and there's all the different colors of the rainbow bouncing off of the different quartz formations in here. And basically there's a gorgon that'll come out and try and turn you into stone. That's it. Again, that could have been a lot more interesting. I think about in the Beholders, a lot of Guy Duke's adventures, you'd have encounters like this, and then he would have a little map, right, that was stuck in between the text for that encounter. And I think a few of these, but certainly the castle, maybe the forest with the Tyrannosaurus Rex certainly could be more interesting. This cave system could definitely be more interesting than just the one encounter. But in any event, eventually you'll head to the north. You go down this staircase, and you find this 10-foot tall guy that's there. He has some really long name. His name is Flobocorodandrung. And basically he's going to fight you. You have to kill him. And if you do, you get his treasure, and in his treasure you'll find the little pink gem. So there you go. Pretty linear, kind of a bunch of random concepts that don't necessarily tie together, but I guess you buy into the idea that this is just sort of this weird, pocket dimension that you go to for this thing. Definitely one session, no more, I don't think. And unless you really flesh it out and make a lot of these encounters a lot more expansive than what they are here. The next article is shop review. It is just pick a shop and tell us about it, tell us how to get there, where it is, who's there. He even talked about like what time of day to go. Like don't go Saturday mornings because it's really crowded. Go in the afternoon or during the week. And this first one is called Gamer, a small and discreet establishment tucked back the streets of Brighton. And he goes on to tell you all these details about it. Gives it some ratings, size, stock, layout, and service. He likes the guy who works there quite a bit. I think it's a great idea. It's a real service to the community and to the hobby to tell people how to find different cool gaming stores. We still do that today, right? Like we're going to travel somewhere for business or vacation. We send a note to friends on Facebook and say, hey, does anybody live near this town? Is there a good game store in that town I should go check out? That kind of thing. So he was trying to do that even back then. So I like that quite a bit. The Preacher's Pulpit is sort of for short articles or short ideas, I guess. This is by a guy named John Crook. He's got some questions here for you to think about. But in essence, what he says is, hey, I've got this idea for this game. It's called Dungeons and Dragons. It's very similar to the one that you play, but in this game, all rules are optional. You can use any of the information you find in fanzines or TSR magazines like The Dragon, or not. And he basically just is sort of an article saying, encouraging homebrew with a vengeance, to say just do whatever you want to do. Obviously, you can't take that to a convention and try and use your rules or your characters in, an official AD&D game. But really, you should enjoy playing the game however you want to play. And he mentions Big G being, I assume, Gary Gygax. Don't let him tell you what to do and how to have fun. That's a pretty common sentiment, I think, at this time for folks, right? A couple ideas he mentions from his home campaign. He says, they play a very low-level campaign. He says 5 years, only 4 people have gotten to 7th level. So most people are either dying or slowly accumulating experience points. One of the reasons he says it takes so long is you only get to gain full experience points on treasure that you spend on yourself, like, gaining a level, donations to the deity of a cleric or a paladin, training for a fighter, etc. But otherwise, if you're just hoarding wealth, you only get 1/100th of the value for those gold pieces. He also says they've added skills and hobbies. That's a pretty common thing, I think, in a lot of early fanzines, to add some type of skill system in addition to what you get for your character class. And that's something that they've done. And as he says, like, I'm not trying to tell you this is how you should play your game. This is just how we play our game. And that's the whole point, is like, you do you, right? The second thing he wants to talk about here is, he calls them the LLCs. And back in the day, what that meant was not limited liability company. It was low-level characters. And so he's bemoaning how ineffective first-level characters can be. And also, he calls it the products of Lake Michigan. I think he means Lake Geneva and TSR. But how they say these modules are being made for such and such level. And he says he finds oftentimes players are not ready for the challenge or the difficulty of many of the adventures that are coming out of there. And he also says that in his view, unfortunately, people think that the Dungeons and Dragons products are the only standard or only option, and a lot of people don't look at any other games or products for other games as something to consider using, because they feel like the only thing you can do is whatever TSR says is official. So those are his complaints. We get your rights, which is their letters column. The first guy says, make sure you include scenarios in the new Beholder, which I mentioned before. He said his tension with how much space that would take up compared to other things he wanted to include, and how he decided he probably will do it, but he's going to shrink down the font size so it doesn't take up as many pages. Here the next guy says how excited he is to know that the Beholder will continue. But he hopes, like the Beholder, that this will focus on D&D. So, I didn't like the Aerial Servant because it had too many other things, and in particular Travller, which I don't like. So I hope you stick more to a fantasy RPG D&D centric fanzine. We got some guy who complains about the price. Also got a guy complaining like, look, I don't know why you're doing, like, basically changing anything. The Beholder was an amazing fanzine. Why didn't you just stick with that? And then another guy who says, I sure hope this is going to be worth it because 75 pence seems too expensive. Here are our new monsters. There are 2 this time. The first one, greatly named Furry. And the Furry is a very cute, mischievous, and dangerous creature, about 2.5 feet tall, with an excellent drawing here. And basically, which I like this backstory a lot. So these are little guys that were guys and gals, created by a magic user, but they had developed, they're super intelligent, and they have innate magical ability. So like when they see you cast a spell, they can sort of learn how to cast that spell without having to be a magic user, right? Without having a spell book. They can just sort of, I guess, figure out how to invoke that magic by watching you or maybe reading your spell book, and then it becomes something they can use. So they can use spells sort of the same number, as a magic user might. So it's not like endless spells, right? But it's all just sort of innate casting ability. And so you roll them a level, 1st through 6th magic user, to see how many spells a day they can cast. But again, they cast them, they just pick them and cast them innately each day. So what happened was the magic user, who was not as talented as his group of furries, became very upset and jealous, and then basically they end up having to kill him, and now they sort of roam the earth free. These little, and have obviously their population has grown, and now there are little furries roaming around out there. I guess it says they banished him to the abyss. They didn't kill him, but because they're neutral. They also have a little bit of low-level thieving abilities, and they're sort of cute, mischievous guys roaming around out there. Pretty decent. The second thing, no picture for this one, and you'll understand why, is the Quiverk. And the Quiverk is the mist elemental. Basically, that's what it looks like, right? It can take shape. It can look like, it can sort of blend into fog and haze, etc. The main thing that it does when it attacks, it tries to envelop a victim, and basically it'll drain 2 hit points per round if it can envelop you, and you'll lose strength, constitution, and wisdom every round. And so, which is temporary. When your wisdom gets to 0, your willpower is lost, so you don't have any desire to fight. And if your strength or constitution gets to 0, you're not capable, right, of continuing the level of activity necessary for actual melee combat. Once all of your 3 ability scores have been drained to 0, it no longer causes you any damage. It basically inhabits your body. Your skills will come, your stats will come back, but your hit points stay where they were. You'll have to either rest or get magical healing. You may not know that you've basically been inhabited by this mist creature. You may think it just dissipated. And it'll basically live in there until it decides to take you over for usually only a couple of situations. One, it hates fire dwelling creatures or fire creatures like fire salamander, anything connected to the plane of fire. And it will go berserk, forcing the body to attack that creature to the death. They don't care if you get killed. They'll try and kill the fire elemental type creature, creature connected to the elemental plane of fire. And if someone realizes you've been possessed and tries to get rid of the Quiverk, it will cause you to fight back. So like if a priest was going to cast something to try and get that thing out of you, it would force you to attack the priest. And if it hangs out in there for 555 days, I guess that's the expiration date, it just abandons you automatically, no pain. So that's an interesting creature, and a new idea for the thing that inhabits your body but doesn't necessarily take over right away. All right, so my version of this, someone had already done at least most of the word search of Graham Staplehurst. He did 2 of these in the Beholder. I like these puzzles quite a lot, and like the other ones. So this is super challenging. There are 149 words on here. They've circled one to start with, which is the word ritual, going down this way. Then there's 139 more words written here. That'll get you to 140. Then there are going to be 9 more, they don't tell you what they are, that you have to find. 8 of them are hidden words, which are the name of 8 role-playing games. And then you look at the letters that aren't circled, or aren't in any word that you found, and you write those down, and there should be scramble, and you have to re-scramble them or unscramble them, and that will be the name of a book. And so the competition is you mail that into the magazine with the name of that book, and you can get yourself a prize. Pretty cool. All right. Whoops. There's a blow up of the word search. The Armorer's Guild by Michael Dale. He says there's going to be a series of articles where he goes into history and talks about the arms and armor and battlements and defensive structures that different real historical groups in the medieval times constructed. So the first one is the Picts, Picts, in northern Europe, and the second one are the Celts. And he just gives you, the type of weapons they use, the type of buildings they would construct, and so forth. So I don't find it particularly interesting because I'm not trying to recreate real European medieval history in my D&D campaigns. But if you did, and you really crave that kind of detail, then here's some history done for you. Anthern, as it says, is a Travller campaign concept for you. I don't really play Travller, but that's in here. Helmenhale. Graham Staplehurst is still encouraging people to send him. So remember, he's inspired by the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. He humbly says he wants to design something that's going to be even better. And what he's encouraging readers to do is send me a temple. Describe it. Tell me what it looks like. Tell me who occupies it or uses it. Give me an inn, a tavern, a blacksmith shop, magic shop, whatever it is you want to create. And he's going to aggregate all these ideas, decide where to put them inside of his town, and then eventually he will have this product that he will share with the community. I'm still looking. I don't think this ever actually gets done. Next is the Electric Zygote, which I mentioned has evolved from the Aerial Servant. So it still has postal games, but it has more than that. So here they give you some information about what are postal games, how do you play them, which postal games do we already have running, different people connected to this, right? Because remember, the guys who ran the Aerial Servant had several. So they tell you how to write to those people and what's going on. You can participate. Then they have some other information. Classified ads, they tell you what you could put here, nothing here yet. Contacts is where you can try and get connected to other gamers. Information, so here they advertise Dragon Meet 4, which is going to be held on King's Road in London in August of that year. Games Day 81 is going to be a 2-day event this year. And then some industry news. A TSR plans to release a number of modules in the summer of 1981. C2, Ghost Tower of Inverness. A2, Secrets of the Slaver's Stockade. A3, Assault on the Area of the Slave Lords. A4, The Dungeons of the Slave Lords. And remember they're calling S4, which becomes, I think, I1, Dwellers of the Forbidden City. And then Rapid Stroke, a top secret module, and maybe something for Gamma World, and maybe something for Boot Hill. A note for Dragon Magazine, there's been some publication delays over here in getting it to the UK. So they're not sure, maybe they'll get as high as number 47 this year. And the Expert Set, that's the Moldvay Cook version of the D&D basic set, is supposed to be coming out. Then there's going to be a book for Phineas Fingers. I have that somewhere. It's a comic from the magazine. And the Fiend Folio. I don't know when this is coming out, he says. We've been promised for over a year. You remember there's quite a long delay getting the Fiend Folio published. And finally, the last section of the Electric Zygote reviews. And here's the review for DragonQuest, role-playing game published by SPI. And as they say at the end, all in all, it's an offering. It's a very good system. I haven't had a chance to see how well it works with an extended campaign. I think all in all, it's better written or better system than D&D. But we'll see how we feel about playing it. That's what Dragon's Quest looks like. And then we have Ring World Engineers, which is actually a novel that's been written as they encourage people to read. Whoops, going backwards. And then we have Alex Self, Folly the comic. The magic user reading Deities and Demigods book. He says, the goddess Aphrodite is almost as good looking as me. And then he goes on to read, Aphrodite is an extremely vain and jealous goddess. If any character should unfavorably compare Aphrodite's charm to, and then there's a lightning bolt, and he's a pile of ash. He said, his or her own, there's a 10% chance the goddess will hear and seek revenge. Groan, why don't I keep my big mouth shut? Some other art. I always like to take a look at the art from the early days. These aren't signed. This first one, like this little goblin guy, is reading How to Appreciate the Opinion of Others. He says rubbish. And then we get a new sci-fi guy for the Travller section. And finally, this little creature with the long hooked fingers and the spear, looking kind of nasty. Have a couple of advertisements in the front and the back. I know some people think that's kind of interesting. So the first one is called Games of Liverpool, and then the back is as Devium Games, advertising what they have for sale. And then the back inner cover has a full page advertisement we've seen before from Games Unlimited. That's our look at the New Beholder. That's the first of the 4 New Beholder fanzines that are produced by Scale Designs. Number 26 from the summer of 1981. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Hope you're enjoying the series, and I hope you're subscribed. If you have friends who might enjoy our content, please send them our way. Hopefully they'll become subscribers as well. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. And until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.